That was ambassadorial stuff.
Anybody else?
FIFA.
Paraguay, Thailand, Taiwan.
It was the formal porphyry
and
today
New
for
Zealand
that. Yeah.
football team. The Paraguayan girls looked like they were in Disneyland.
They loved it.
Yeah, I don't know what Paraguay, our Sunseon's like, but. Yeah, I know, but they come from a military junta, don't they, that runs that place. So they look,
Which country?
Paraguay, they look like they came from, the shackles were off.
And I knew you'd be impressed because they gave me a luggage tag for a suitcase. It's got a football pitch on the back of it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, like that.
Very cool.
So next time I do actually get to travel, my football pitch is coming with me. It's good. Okay, everyone. I'll just get back to the beginning. Oops, I've just gone out of it now. Oh, thanks. Okay. I'll declare the meeting open. It is an open council meeting, so I think we have a number of apologies. We have an apology from Councillor Hutt, who's not feeling very well today, and Councillor Thompson is not going to make it now either. Councillor O'Leary has gone off at other council business. So I'll move. Pardon? Oh. Okay, Louise is online. Cool. So I'll take that bit back. Anna Casey Cox can't make it. Melena's online?
Yeah.
Cool. So it's just Anna and Angela, yeah? And Sarah. And Sarah, who's done really well to come into anything with just such a brand new baby. So it's good that she's taken it easy. I'll move. Yeah, I'll come back for it. There's no money in there, Mark. Just. Ooh. You'll have everybody running. And, no, but it definitely is my handbag. So I'll move that the apologies be accepted, and Maxine is seconding. All in favour? Opposed? Carried. Confirmation of the agenda is as is. Are there any declarations of interest? No, there being none. Public forum? No. Yes, we got Kelly Pike. No?
You want to go for the bottom one?
Oh gosh, yeah, sorry. Same, but different, yeah. So we've got the one item around the Three Waters reform. So we'll just crack on, get in.
Great, thank you, Morena Council. Sorry, Atamari. I'll take the whole report as read and really just comment on the two attachments. So the first attachment, which starts on page 9 in Diligent, that contains the submission on the Water Services Economic Efficiency and Consumer Protection Bill. The submission supports economic consumer protection and is highly aligned to Council's previous submissions on this topic. And the four key sort of points from that submission are around regulation needing to take a holistic approach, so i.e. a view of cultural, social, economic and financial well-being for our community. Not treating water as a commodity, so it brings life to our people for food, for housing, businesses and recreation. And that regulation must find a balance across the well-beings, which is something that's not previously been seen in consumer and community regulation and protection before. And the fourth point is the well-being of the water and the quality and reliabilities of water infrastructure is paramount to the community's well-being and the regulators as well. So I'll move straight into the more substantive submission, which is attachment 2 on page 22 in Diligent. So that submission is on the Water Services Legislation Bill. And the submission's been drafted to continue and reinforce Council's previous position, which is to oppose this reform model. This particular bill is very complex. It's an amendment bill for the recently passed Water Services Entity Act, and being an amendment bill, you simply cannot read it as a standalone document. You need to have the Act open beside you and read the two together. It increases the legislative sections from 228 to 475 and amends 28 other pieces of legislation. If I look back to Council's view last year, the lack of provision for a CCO model and many other areas of concern has meant our position on the Water Services Entity Bill was that it should be withdrawn. And while that bill has now been enacted, the position of Council is still unchanged in this submission. substantial sections of the new Water Services Legislation Bill are referred to as amendments to the Water Services Entities Act. And this provides government with an opportunity to reconsider that act. And I note the minister responsible now has been requested to consider possible changes to the Three Waters program and report back to Cabinet. So this particular bill, though, appears rushed and comes across as needing some further work. Since Council's previous submissions on reform, the bill introduces additional concerns for Council, which we've summarised in the submission. For these reasons, Hamilton City Council is strongly opposed to the passing of the bill in its present form and recommends its withdrawal. Withdrawal of the bill would enable the government to work with councils to develop reform structures and options that responds to Hamilton's previous submissions. So I'm happy to stop there, take questions, or even receive amendments to the submission from elected members as well. Thank you.
Cool. So just on that amendments, I welcome. There has been a group of councillors who've lent into looking at these reform submissions, and so happy to hear from any of them as to the changes we were able to make through our feedback, Andrew, through that process. Councillor Hamilton.
Thanks, Chair. Andrew, just on page 13, and just a high-level response from you would be great. 27B, the proposed scope of quality regulation must be reduced as it is poorly targeted and overlaps with other regulatory mechanisms. Are you able to just quickly highlight what some of those are?
I'll just refer to Stephen Halliwell to help with that question.
Can you the reference number on page
27B.
27B. Yeah.
Got it. I think this refers to, in the body of the submission, it does talk about some of the other parallel pieces of legislation and some of the regulation that sits elsewhere not being aligned. Is that what this relates to?
Yeah,
I think that Ryan's trying to get some clarity about exactly what does it overlap with?
Yeah. So the regulation that the Waters entity is going to face, they have the Waters regulator, they have health regulator, they have the economic regulator, they have to follow regulation from regional councils. There's a graphic that sort of shows this massive regulation. So they're going to be highly regulated, and this bill is you know, largely it's pretty good based on the things that we looked at in our earlier submission, but there's some things that could still be further improved, and so getting coordination across those regulators would be a great advantage. And in fact, we've previously, you know, we submitted on the Water Services Entities Act that there needed to be a review in the future, and that review is in the bill, the Water Services Bill, that will help assess whether, and that includes the regulators in that bill, so that'll help improve what is complex and at times mismatched legislation.
So you're saying there is actually a built-in, like a self-audit?
It's an independent audit. So there's within the Water Services Legislation Bill, there's provision for 2 reviews. One of them is a regulatory review, and one of them is a review of the water services entities themselves and how they're doing.
And sorry, when does that take place? Or when would that?
5 years and 9 years, and we've submitted that they both should be 5 years.
Okay.
And if I may give a very specific answer, so an example might be there's clear overlap with the Te Mata ROI reporting requirements outside of this bill. So that's the kind of overlap that you're seeing. So if they've got their own legislation, we've got this amendment bill, they're both speaking to the same kind of reporting, hence the overlap.
Thank you. Helps.
Councillor Bidder.
Thank you, Mayor Paula. Is there any comment or further submission you would consider adding to this in relation to the impact on infrastructure of the cyclone? We're seeing all the trouble that's going on in Gisborne, Napier and Hastings area and the water problems they have. And if all this legislation isn't going to prevent or solve problems like that, then we could comment on that now.
Yeah, I think it goes to the core of previous submissions as well, which is around the need for integration with growth and growth planning. And so from my perspective, we certainly had an eye on that as we've finalised that to come to this council meeting. We have not been timid in setting out our concerns around that growth interface, which I think then speaks to the issue you're raising, which is the impacts of high rainfall events in urban environments. So I think we've got it covered, but if you think we need to do some more, open to that as well.
That's good.
So you're happy with that,
Yes.
Andrew, where it sits at the moment?
Yes.
Okay, any other questions, concerns from members? I guess we've dissected it a few times, but it's complex. So this, with your chance to say something, of course you can in debate. Oh, you move that? I'll second. Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. We'll go into debate, but just before we do, because I just want to debate this, just want to say thank you very much to staff for your work. I know that the tight schedule and deadlines have really put you on the back foot, but thankfully you're very knowledgeable and prepared, and you've been going through this from the very beginning. So, but I do know that you've spent exceptional long hours pulling this together, and so I appreciate that. And we look forward to presenting at the Select Committee alongside staff and strengthening some of our views there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Paula. May I just, it has been a particularly proud moment, I think, for all of the HCC team. This has genuinely been one of the more substantive cross-organisational submissions that has taken significant work. And I'll probably end up missing departments here, but certainly right from building control, the growth team, developer contributions, significant input from the City Waters team, even the transport team in relation to stormwater matters, and then of course the core water reform team as well. So it has been an exceptional effort, so thank you for your acknowledgement.
Brilliant. Thank you. All right. Councillor Hamilton, you're the mover.
Look, I was just going to talk what you said, Mayor Paula, to Andrew and the team. Stephen, I'm sure we'll find some other work for you as well. But an incredible effort across the organisation, and I'll put my mark on. And a very strong submission. Gosh, the detail and the level of understanding, I think we're educating the government on their own policies, basically.
Yeah, we so are.
So yeah, well done. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson. Oh, have you gone? No, you are here.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Paula. Look, I'm pleased to support this submission to Wellington. It's the equivalent of the headmaster sending the student, in this case the government's the student, a report with a -D average. They have failed in every component. When this first surfaced, I used the analogy after the first iteration that they had put lipstick on the pig. So the pig was still a pig, but it was looking slightly more attractive. As we go through this process, not only the government, as the owner of the pig, has suddenly realised, my gosh, this really is not doing well. So they've been telling their own people to go back and try to make it more palatable. The frustration, however, I still have is I think they'll ignore our advice. They may dabble a little bit more, but I think fundamentally they're going to ignore it. and they're going to put it into legislation. And what really breaks my heart is the amount of work, energy that our staff have invested over the months trying to say to government, and this is in the written form we're about to send them, you've got this inherently wrong. It is so flawed. Withdraw it, rework on it. And I think all that work will have gone to waste. And I think the community at large are now of the same opinion that a number of councillors were right from day one. This is a flawed policy. And the tragedy is that the fact that we need to spend or change the funding model on water infrastructure is very clear, right? It's just the fact that the proposal they've put forward is poorly structured. And so I'm disappointed that both government and I guess local government potentially have lost an opportunity of finding a more fit for purpose funding model for the replacement and additional water infrastructure. So thanks to the staff, I think you've done a great job in telling why the government has got this all wrong. Let's hope that someone now is going to listen and try to fix it, but I'm fearful they won't, and I'm fearful for decades we'll be trying to unravel this terribly executed strategy.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Tauriki.
Thank you, Andrew, for your dedication and hard mahi that you and your team have done. Appreciate that a lot. I've been a strong supporter of Three Waters from day dot. As a matter of procedural process, Mea Paula, my voting functions do not have an abstention opportunity there. What happens in the event that I do not want to support this submission, nor do I want to vote against it? Vote against it.
Procedurally, you can't abstain, so you will have to determine with your conscience whether you supported enough to let it go with notes on the record that you had concerns about it, or whether you choose to vote it down, and the same thing happens. You know, the minutes will be recorded, so it will sit in the minutes.
Yeah, I acknowledge the. I also acknowledge the work and the highlights
Did I say
made
that right?
in
Thank
the
you.
submission. Andrew, and so thank you very much. And I am about trying to model and be a part of a team, and so I make my decision based on the evidence and the facts that are presented in front of me. And I can't help but see how compelling and overwhelming pretty much all of what you've presented. However, we've been in this council and made cast votes based around principles. I think in this particular instance, I need to be making a decision as part of a team, and the team that you're trying to form here, Mea Paula. And so I can't really go against the evidence that Andrew has presented here today, and so I'm compelled to support the submission in the best interest of us working closer and more collegially as decision makers.
Thank you. I respect that point of view. Thank you for expressing that. Any other debate? Councillor Taylor.
Thanks, Mayor Paula. Yeah, look, congratulations to the staff for amazing, powerful submission, and thank you for preparing it as quickly as you did, making it available for elected members, and focusing on the water services legislation bill part of it. I just think it's bang on, and I think it comes through disturbingly well in the submission how clumsy this legislation is and how poorly attuned it is to the needs of the city, and I think how less likely it is to work at any level. It's that kind of tone-deaf, one-size-fits-all model that this government specialises in, ignoring local partnerships and existing planning networks. I just think, honestly, I always have done, I just think it's spectacularly stupid. But it's also malicious, because it deliberately erodes local democracy, local democratic representation. It's a fundamental constitutional shift away from liberal democracy to a situation where you get a seat at the table, a decision-making table based on other things. And as the submission beautifully puts it, non-elected people and organisations with no direct accountability to ratepayers are given the power to tax our community and make decisions on behalf of our people. Who would have thought? It takes Hamiltonians much further away from decision makers. It was always going to. 2 years ago, I remember saying they might as well be on Pluto, because the accessibility that Hamilton residents will have will just be further removed. And the transition, the submission makes it clear the transition could potentially be a nightmare and expensive. I was staggered to read that at the moment there's no real mechanism for addressing private development agreements and how they would be brought across to this new massive mega corporate entity. So surely these are going to be honoured, but the prospect of how you transfer them across is obviously scary and going to involve a lot of work. I'm also worried about the stormwater, and I mean, hell, who wouldn't be after the last couple of weeks? It's a real sticking point. Who is responsible for the provision of which stormwater network, and what could be more relevant? What could be more important to get right and not be rushed through in bad legislation? Congratulations, staff. Fantastic submission. Really proud of it.
Thank you, Jeff. Anyone else like to debate? Otherwise, I think I have a few points. Anybody else? You get right to reply, Ryan, if you need it. Thank you. While a number of us have acknowledged the need for reforms in the Three Waters space, it's always been quite clear that the current entity or the current form of the legislation is not the right fit for Hamilton. And as we've delved more into it, that has become more and more evident. Just let's remember, though, that recent events do show that we need investment in the Three Waters system. We need resilience, we need future-proofing, we need money spent. Not Hamilton per se, luckily we escaped with just the side of the storm. We got tickled by it compared to some of the other parts of the country. I've always said that investment for waters infrastructure needs to go hand in hand with the planning for it, and that's given me great concern, because the investment required to bring us all up to where we need to be for future-proofing water services is huge, eye-wateringly huge, and we don't see how that's going to be managed in a way that suits Hamilton at the moment. I agree with Jeff, stormwater. We've always said that's the elephant in the room, and that's the one thing we've least talked about in the early stages of this. But this submission was an eye-opener even for me, who already knew what stormwater was going to be a can of worms. It was still an eye-opener for me when I realised how little understanding at a national level, and we don't have low understanding, but we have low capacity to deal with what's expected in stormwater. There again, we just have to look at the TV to understand the role that stormwater plays in our community. The whole experience, however, so stormwater is huge. Staff are leading in this field, there is no doubt about it. And I do want to put on public record that I know that the government, policymakers and others around the country, other councils, hold our council with huge respect for the work that you do. In fact, they keep trying to poach you, so, you must be good. The whole experience has enabled, if we flip it to the upside, if there is an upside, the whole experience has enabled a warts and all look, a close look at the situation with Three Waters. We've really had to get right in to the very detail. That in itself is good, But now it's time for government to rethink and partner genuinely with us to get the best for Hamilton and New Zealand. Because, you know, clearly, when you see the disaster that's going on today, you can see that Hamilton needs to be part of New Zealand Inc. as well and help in those regards. But we must look more closely at the flaws, which have been articulated really well in this report, to get it right. And I think, putting aside any party or personal politics that may exist, we need to push on government to work more closely with us to get the right solution for our city. Anyone else like to vote? Right or reply? No? Cool. All right, let's go to the vote. Everyone? On the board? On the board? Yep, please. It's really weird that both light up, isn't it? It's really strange. Oh, sorry guys on Zoom, I didn't even look. You would have shouted at me if you needed to speak, wouldn't you? Is it going?
Councillor Malena, could you just confirm your vote?
Councillor Bidder? No.
No. Malena.
Malena? Oh, she's in favour. Okay.
The motion is carried
and Louise,
unanimously.
you got Louise as well? Yes. Okay, cool. Right, thank you, Council. Thanks again, staff. This is one step. We've got another step to come, which is when we present our evidence to the Select Committee. So, onwards. Have a good day, everyone.